Reflect that the board met in executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or persons. And if you all join me in standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What happens back there? The first order of business, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. Do I have a motion on the approval of the minutes of April 11? Got a motion? A second? Questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion on the minutes from April 16th. A second? All in favor? Thank you. Action 4 is the approval of the treasurer's report from March. Do I have a motion? A second? Questions? All in favor? Thank you. Item 5 is the report of the superintendent. Dr. Giarrizzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome to all. We're within 2 weeks of our budget vote, and I'm glad to be meeting with a lot of our residents over the past several weeks to discuss the budget. Tomorrow, if you are available and around, we have a budget coffee and conversation at the Seacliff Bistro at 9:30 a.m. We were at Leonetti's this week. We were at Grassroots last week. I will be at Gemelli's next week, and Trace Sorrell on the night before the budget.
This is Dr. Giarrizzo's food tour. Join us.
Yes, join me, please. Key highlights of the 2019-20 budget include stable class size, the addition of an elementary health and wellness teacher, the addition of an elementary guidance counselor, the incorporation of FIRST robotics for all first graders and all of our pre-calculus students. We have new STEM electives in robotics, coding, and computer science at the high school. We have a new required coding elective for all 8th graders. We have clubs to support all 3 pillars of our strategic plan around teaching and learning, equity for all learners, and social emotional learning. We have some significant safety and security upgrades, including additional staffing, so we've added an additional security person to each school. We have lighting, we have camera work, we have some wiring. We are expanding the implementation of the full-day co-teach model from grade 1 to grades K through 4 for next year. In the 2021 budget, we plan to finish that implementation up through grade 5. We're expanding the Chromebooks, additional 2 grade levels. You'll see the board has a budget transfer tonight to allow us to shift to Chromebook implementation of cart-based Chromebooks in grades 5 to keep the screens in school, and by doing that, that enables us to complete the implementation at North Shore Middle School a year sooner than we thought. We also have new electives in media literacy at the middle school and the implementation of ProQuest research tools for all students across the entire district. We're piloting a 21st right, there's a wabbit. 21st century classroom spaces in all 5 schools for next year. So those will have flexible seating, flexible configurations. We're excited about it. And then just to note, we do have a reduction in second administrator, that we had reduced 1 administrative position last year. We're reducing a second administrative position this year. The board will take action on those recommendations this evening. We're also presenting the community a proposal via proposition to vote on what is likely the final reduction in transportation limits in North Shore. So This year, we have a 1.0 mileage limit for secondary students grades 6 through 12, and 3/4 of a mile for elementary. Next year, we're asking to reduce those limits to 3/4 of a mile K through 12, so that will increase our ridership. Finally, I just want to remind everybody of the candidate election, and if you haven't seen it, and the budget, there is a lot of information on our website. There's a tab. You can just click on the top. It's got election information, candidate information. You can read all about the budget, the propositions, and much more. Our personnel updates. We've been busy at work recruiting. So our Seacliff principal search is in the very final stages, and we're on target for our May 30th appointment. You didn't think it could be done, but there you are. Our Glenhead principal search is totally underway. We began our screening interviews yesterday. We'll be forwarding candidates to committee prior to Memorial Day. Director of Counseling search is also underway. Our screening interviews will begin next week. We actually had a nice, I was pleasantly surprised by the caliber of candidates that applied for the job. We didn't have a lot, but we have some good quality candidates in there. We'll start interviewing those candidates next week, and we'll be forwarding those candidates to committee after Memorial Day. Both the Glenhead principal search and the Director of Counseling search are on target for a June 13 appointment and potentially a July 1 start, but depending on timing and resignations, maybe middle of July. So we will keep you posted on that. Our study and analysis to identify the needs and final end scope for bond work, the tax neutral bond for the fall, is ongoing. We are ready to bring revisions back to our bond advisory committee, and we're making plans for a second community forum on June 18. We'll have full updates for the board at our next meeting on May 30th, and then again on June 13th, and we will look to wrap up a scope by the end of this academic year. And then if you, just as I'll run through a quick accolades that have been happening over the past several weeks. So North Shore Schools are the recipients of the Sally G. Hahn Outstanding Foreign Language Elementary School Award. We were awarded as the one district in the entire state for the award. It's based on the seamless implementation of the program with language choice, as well as the commitment to communicative learning and authentic learning throughout the FLES program. So that's I want to thank our director, Anna Aguiar, for leading that work, and we have really terrific FLES teachers. When we tour classrooms, they are really exciting to be, and kids are really excited about what they're learning. This was our first year that we implemented National History Day for our entire 8th grade. And I would believe it, but one of our 8th grade team is the New York State champion and heading to the Nationals, so in year 1. So imagine what this will look like in year 2 or 3. Super excited. Those are Michael Granelli, Christian Holden, and Nick LaRosa. Good job to them. We're going to bring them here on the 30th. Christina Ramirez was recognized as one of 20 seniors in the entire county as a scholar artist, and she was awarded at the Tillis Center last week. And then we had some decent news in the U.S. News and World Report rankings. So our high schools ranked in the top 4%, 4th percentile in the state and 5th percentile in the country. These are a little irregular and they can change. But there was also some reporting in the Times about last week about the growth of students in North Shore and how that compares across the country, and that's in the top 4% of the entire country as well. So these things are inconsistent, but they're good measures, and at least indicate that our schools are good places to learn. So I'm excited about that. And so with that, I will turn it back to you.
I think we're all
We're in a good
excited
place.
about
Yeah,
that. Thank you.
welcome.
Up next, the report from the STO.
You can top that, John? That's good.
He was trying to say.
Betty.
Oh,
All right, all
I
right.
thought you said I could top that. I was like, okay.
I didn't hear that, sorry. Okay, I'll use the mic. All right, so I'll start off. First of all, that's a lot of great news from the rankings to the students. Christine, one of my friends, just fantastic news. Obviously, didn't expect anything less because
Absolutely.
So for in the high school, I'll start off with a bunch of SGO things from past. I feel like I haven't been here in a little while. So the SGO, we ran a handball tournament that was very successful, and we also decided to give back to our teachers a little bit because we do a lot for the students, but we don't do enough for the teachers. So we did a little teacher appreciation event where students got to do a little nice thing, give a bunch of nice notes to their teachers. I think everybody appreciated it. Also, we just we're wrapping up our student forum talks on next week. We have a debrief meeting on that, so hopefully we can start implementing the things that we saw and continue in the pathways that we hope to continue in. Surprisingly, it's actually almost mid-May and it's election season already for the SGO, and I feel like this is a very elections are underestimated in their ability for positive and constructive change, especially obviously with every election, but in the SGO especially. So this year I really wanted to take the stance and the change of moving the SGO away from the typical movie popularity contest election. So we're making a bunch of different changes to concentrate the candidates into dedicated students who really want to work as a government type official in the SGO. So some of the things that we're doing is every candidate, we're actually utilizing the TVs around the school for every candidate to have a sort of run a campaign on, where we extended speeches into every vice president and president, candidate position or campaign, along with the written statement that they have to produce and the petitions. In addition, in most recent news, we removed co-positions from all positions except for presidents. So that's going to concentrate the kids in SGO to dedicated kids, and we're going to have a small but, and I'll say it again, dedicated SGO. Hopefully this really can continue to improve the direction of where we're going over the next few years. So that's very exciting. In other news around school, obviously College Decision Day passed, so we had, a great showing of all the colleges on May 1st. APIB week, or it used to be week, it's really a month now, which is really quite something, but it started a few days ago. It's a great time of the year, but it's obviously very bittersweet as everything's coming to the end. We have a lot of cumulative events coming up in the next few weeks. I could just name drop or date drop a bunch of them. The Science Research Symposium is June 3rd. The athletic dinner and the musicians dinner are the 2 days following that. And then obviously we have, I can't remember exactly the other days, but graduation's right there. So is all the proms and everything else. Junior prom is coming up in about a week and a half, so that should be fun. And then finally, the budget's coming up. Go vote. I can't, but yeah. So thanks.
One thing, if I could just add on one thing to that, John. If you, for those of you who are interested in where some of our students are attending next year, if you, on your way out, if you walk by the counseling office, there's a wall that students are posting their plans for next year. So they're all coloring these little Viking heads.
Yes.
right,
Yes,
with their
yes.
school colors and whatever, and posting where they're headed in the fall. So if you go, you'll see it's pretty impressive this year.
Tried to put mine on the top, but
I saw it on the top
I realized
left.
I wasn't
Yeah.
tall enough to reach all the way up there. So.
Thank you, John. We really appreciate the report.
Congratulations, John.
Thank you. Item 7 is the hearing. It is the budget reading.
Okay. So I just read this, yes? Okay, so the reading of the budget, the proposed budget for the 2019-2020 school year is $1,799,954.90, a total increase of 2.795% over the 2018-19 budget. We anticipate revenue of $19,449,225.11. This will result in a tax levy of $88,350,729.79, a 2.63% increase. This is below the allowable tax levy cap established by New York State, and a simple majority is needed for passing. There will be one additional proposition on the ballot this year to reduce transportation eligibility limits for grades 6 through 12 to 3/4 of a mile with no additional cost to the district. The district clerk will include a copy of the budget proposal as a record of the minutes of this meeting. Copies of the adopted budget proposal are available this evening and at the central office, 112 Franklin Avenue, Seacliff. The election of trustees and vote on the budget will take place on Tuesday, May 21, 2019, from 7 o'clock a.m. until 10 o'clock p.m. in the North Shore High School Gymnasium. Registration for the budget vote will take place Saturday, May 11th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Central Administration Building, 112 Franklin Avenue, Seacliff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.
I think that's it.
It's a little anticlimactic in some way.
There's
Okay.
also, excuse me, I'm sorry, for anybody who is here tonight, there are some budget documents in the back, so you've helped yourself to them on your way out tonight. And Olivia.
I was like, it's demonstrated. And if you don't wish to carry the paper home, it is online. We will move on then to our regular business. Action item A is the approval of the agreement between the Board of Education and the North Shore Administrators Council. These are in their entirety on the agenda there and online if anybody wants the fuller explanation. Do I have a motion? Do I have, and I have the second. Any questions or comments?
Obviously, I don't want to vote against a resolution that reduces administrators. This is sort of discussion for both items A and B, where B details what the administrative reductions are. This is what I call a good start, but I really feel that our administrative costs are still higher than many comparably sized school districts. I think this is something we have to look at very carefully as our taxpayers are feeling the impact of various fiscal factors. These are administrators, unlike other districts, don't teach. We have 3 people doing a job that one person did when I first came here. And even though we're reducing the positions by changing the titles, we're increasing the salaries of the individuals in here. So the net effect is not that significant. And this would be an area where if we felt budgetary pressure, where I think we have room to make further reductions. So I would just ask that we keep an eye on this and consider carefully, reevaluate this at the end of the year and see if there are other areas where we think we can make further reductions. If push came to shove, I'd really rather eliminate an administrator before a teacher, a classroom teacher, just my personal opinion.
Do you have any other questions? All in favor? Thank you. All right, action B, which we've referred to, which covers the balance of our personnel actions. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Questions or comments? Trustee?
I sent a question earlier about the Regents Review, teachers, how that is selected, and are there any criteria in terms of competency, other than they're certified in that area, as who is selected to teach the Regents Review classes?
So it's posted to the department, folks apply, and then a recommendation comes forward from the department.
But there are no standards imposed? Who makes the determination as to who is eligible to teach these classes?
So I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I mean, without being specific, every time I review one of these, I see teachers in here which I know are not getting good results on the Regents. And yet, we're paying them a stipend, I think it's $93 an hour, which is higher than other districts. I know Garden City pays theirs $75 an hour. And now we are paying teachers extra to do Regents Review classes that they're not having successful results on the Regents in the classroom. So why are we paying them extra? And that's really a disservice to our students, more importantly, than the dollars involved.
So the recommendation comes from the building, and the recommendation of the board comes from me. How many? Oftentimes we don't get a lot of applications for these positions, and so rather than sometimes they would be vacant based on if we didn't appoint who
Honestly,
was there.
when a teacher has a 25 to 30% failure rate on a Regents exam in the classroom, and that doesn't even take into account the number of students that have gotten outside help, I think it's a disservice to have the pretense of putting that teacher in that slot. Makes me crazy.
Other questions and comments?
What is the enrollment in our Regents physics classes? That would afford, we'd need 3 Regents Review instructors.
I don't have that with me.
I understand chemistry is probably pretty heavy, but by the time we get to Regents, we're always, to physics, it seems like there's lower enrollment in physics all around, across the board, to require 3 physics Regents Review instructors. Comment.
I could just, I don't know if it works similarly here as it does in my districts, but the way I'm reading this is that we're approving each of these individuals to teach a Regents Review class. Whether all 3 of them are actually doing it, I don't know whether that's the case. In my district, there might be 4 of us who are teaching Regents Review classes. All of us get approval, but only 2 of us might actually end up doing it.
Right.
So
That's-
my assumption is that it's working that way here as well. So you might have 3 teachers, only one of them might be teaching the review classes, but we're giving approval for all 3 to do that. Sometimes things come up where a teacher it's after school and you have to run out, something happens with your kids and somebody has to fill in for you, so that approval is there. Now that's why we do it that way where I am. I don't know if that works the same way here.
Rob, do you know how this is structured, by the way, by any chance?
I don't want to respond because I
Right.
don't want the wrong response.
Yeah.
But maybe, it feels like the board might enjoy a little more information.
Sure.
I was going to also basically say what Tim said. My understanding, based upon the way that it's worded, is the assignments haven't been made, but
Right.
these are just approvals
Right, these are-
prior to the assignments being
That is absolutely my understanding as well, but I want to be
sure.
clear about the way that's implemented.
Well, I did send the question ahead of time, so.
Oh, I know you did.
I would like some information about how these teachers are selected and if there's any criteria. Just so we can follow up on that, we can put it under old business. I don't want to hold up approval of teachers, but I would like that information.
He seems amenable.
Okay,
All right,
no
we look
problem.
forward to that. Other questions, comments, and action B. You ready to vote?
Ready to go?
All in favor? Thank you. Action C is the adoption of policies. These are the policies that we discussed previously, with the exception of the ones that needed more discussion, which actually includes tutoring is not on here and homework's not on here.
Correct.
For different reasons. I'm going to get the motion. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Questions and discussions? Okay, you want to say something further? You're just saying that it's not there.
word, you said homework, and now I heard it.
Gotcha.
Tutoring and homework.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Action D, acceptance of the donation from the high school PTO, $2,910 for 3 digital monitor screens and mounts. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or thank yous?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? E is the approval of budget transfers. We are transferring a total of $310,000 to cover nicer standards, fire alarms, et cetera, all of which is very exciting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second. Questions or comments on the budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
On the budget transfer, I'm sorry I didn't submit this before, I missed it. How are we spending more money on the Seacliff Playground to bring it up to standards when we spent $750,000 on playgrounds 2 years ago?
It's not that, it's the,
The Seacliff
It's-
Playground,
it is the Seacliff Playground. but
which
it's
we spent a
nicer.
lot, we practically rebuilt the last time when we had
No, it's
the...
specific pieces of equipment that NYSER has said we have
Oh,
to
okay.
change.
But I thought if it was structural, I can't imagine
no,
where
no,
that...
Yeah,
structure
the
whatsoever.
trapeze hanger package and skywheel link. are
Okay,
Apparently
that answers my question.
unacceptable. I'm sorry we put your children in, you know, okay.
I wanted to clarify on the third one, which is testing and modification to underground tanks.
Yes.
Just want to be clear, those are the 3 tanks that we have discussed. One at the Transportation Center, one at Glenwood.
Well, Department of Environmental Conservation, DC came and tested the tanks and saw there was something with the pressure. So they said we should fix it, and this is what it's all about.
I'm asking just because I know we've had an ongoing
Correct,
discussion
correct,
about
correct.
potentially one of those tanks is superfluous.
yes.
And we talked a lot about the cost of what it would take as a district to remove that tank as a one-time cost. So every time I see additional costs for the continuing upkeep of a tank we don't need,
That's not an
No,
underground
this is-
tank.
this
That's
is-
not an underground tank, Dave, the one you're talking about. This is a different tank,
I'm
right?
mid-
No, some of them
It
are
says
underground.
underground tanks.
But the
And-
one at Glenwood, it's
Yes.
not an underground tank.
And this is because they came up with new standards that we have to comply with.
the same tanks that we're talking about.
Correct.
Marion,
New standards.
You're clear?
Yes.
It's the one of the 3.
Yes.
Because I think it's important to know that as we're spending money on things we don't need, that's a risk and a trade-off.
But
So,
I think it will cost.
well, we certainly, violation of environmental department would not.
And
no,
Dave,
no,
to
they
remove the
always-
tank is opening up,
Marion, I
I'm
listened
told.
carefully while you as a lawyer told us your opinion about the quality of our teachers teaching our classes. I get to ask a question here without being interrupted. I think that's only
I
collegial.
didn't interrupt you, Dave. I thought you were done. My apologies.
Thank you.
I'll just take control of the meeting again, if it's all right with everyone. Are there other questions on the budget transfers?
Nope.
Okay. All in favor? All right, action F is the approval to dispose of inventory. We have merely one item, the oven at the Glen Head School cafeteria. I'm assuming you got another one. Is there a motion? Motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Action item G, this is one of my favorites, the tax anticipation note resolution. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second. Second. My question is, we approved it up to that limit of, well, we haven't, but when we vote, we're going to approve it up to the 8. The past several years, it's been at 5
We've
million?
been at 5, and the reason why we
But do you have any anticipation that,
we'll go to 8?
yeah, do you
No.
believe we'll be in the 5 range?
Yes, we'll try to be within the 5-6 range, but it's always good to have it in case state aid, we have issues with state aid in the spring of 2020.
I see
It's
what you're
always
saying.
a standby, so that if there's need for us to go for more money to meet payroll, we can do it. But initially, we don't borrow up to the 8 million.
Great, thank you. Other questions? All in favor? Action H, is the approval agreement between the district and North Shore before and after school childcare or current providers. Do I have a motion? Second? Thank you. Questions? All in favor? Thank you. Action I is the approval of her memorandum of understanding between the district and Hofstra for our student teaching interns. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
And a second. Questions? All in favor? Do you want to say something about
I
that?
just wanted to say that it's a phenomenal program. I'm so happy that we entered this, this board and boards in the past have entered the agreement. And we found some magnificent teachers along the way in this program, and it's a great find for the district. I thank Councilor Lemon too for arranging that years back.
I think yes, no, it really has benefited us. But we did vote, okay. J, approval of the agreement between the district and Mia Hood, who is going to do the K-12 literacy report for us. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Questions, please?
I have a question. I was looking at Ms. Hood's resume, and it seems that she's a graduate of Columbia Teachers College, and she also does work at Columbia Teachers College. So I'm just wondering how she in particular was selected, since it's sort of I guess my concern is that she's prejudiced towards the workshop model. And wouldn't it, if we're evaluating the workshop model, have made more sense to bring in someone who is not invested in that model already, a more neutral observer, to see where the shortcomings of the programs are and what the positives are and how we can improve it, if we're really talking about a true evaluative process?
That's a great question, Marianne. Actually, when her proposal came in, we saw what her, what I'll say pedigree was, the schools that she came from. We were wondering the same thing. Said, wish it wasn't Teachers College. I mean, the unfortunate thing is Teachers Colleges is to the teaching profession one of the, I guess, creme de la cremes of educational institutions. We actually posed that question to her quite directly. Two things that I want to mention is that she is not part of the reading and writing project, the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. That's a whole separate division of the college. She's part of the curriculum. I think it's curriculum and instruction. She did her.
No, she is not part of, I did note that on her resume.
She's not a part of the project. The other piece was she laughed when we asked the question. She said, "I'm not in complete agreement with everything that the Reading and Writing Project does," and she cited some other programs where she feels that they have some better aspects to their program to the ones that Teachers College does. And we talked to her about, her ability to be non-biased in her judgment, and she said she has actually made some recommendations in other districts that didn't go with everything TC, and actually didn't even suggest TC to those schools. So we felt comfortable in her responses and seeing the recommendations that she made to other schools. So we felt that between the two proposals that were submitted, even in light of that she was the better candidate.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that this is a really expensive program. It runs us anywhere between $80,000 and $160,000 a year, depending on what you're doing in terms of professional development. And, I've heard mixed, things about it, but that's not in any kind of systematic, really truly evaluative format. But I think when you have a program that is that costly, if you are truly evaluating it, you really shouldn't have someone from the same institution doing the evaluation of that program. To me, You know, I know her credentials are excellent. I'm not questioning her credentials, but whether she's in the program or not, there is a certain bias. That's all. I mean, obviously, we didn't have that information prior to this meeting, and at this point, I'm not going to vote no against an evaluation of the program. I would just ask when we're doing this in the future that we try and get people that are not coming from the same institution to evaluate a program that we are spending that kind of money on an annual basis.
I agree.
We agree.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We had some, Rob did a nice job getting this out to all the research ones.
Over 20 universities
Yeah.
that we sent it to, and follow up with those universities.
Right.
I believe that they did their best work in trying to get this out to their people. I mean, I had several people saying this is an exciting possibility for us. Let me send it to people in our university who I think would be interested. I followed up with them, and unfortunately, we received 2 proposals.
Right.
Of the 2, this one we felt, both of them were very, very good, but this one we felt was better for reasons that, I could get into. Than the
Right,
other.
and I understand that. I would just ask that when we're doing these things, when we're doing these evaluations, that we really should have someone from a different institution than the institution we're paying a lot of money to every year. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
Well, I just want to reiterate, though, it's to the project that we make the payment. That happens to be a...
I understand, but there is a philosophy inherent.
I was under the impression, right, that, we just consistently refer to it as, TC, but it is not synonymous with the institution. It is a specific curriculum and program from specific people. It is not,
Right, it's a readers and
it is
writers.
not teachers' college per se.
I understand that, I get all of
Refer to
that,
it.
but I think for...
I'm not
the-
disagreeing with you, I'm
Yeah,
clarifying
just,
for me.
even from a perception point of view, we really should
So
have someone
can
from
I
a
just
different,
wanted
yeah.
to hear what they said about the extent to which,
Yeah, truthfully, the program is associated with Lucy Calkins.
yes.
So if her
Lucy
name was on the
Calkins
resume,
happens-
I'd have a problem with it.
Lucy Calkins happens to be a professor at Teachers College, and Teachers College honors her work because it's research-based, blah, blah, blah. I could go on and on. I don't know why Teachers College would allow it to be called Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, but they do. It's really Lucy Calkins' work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right. All in favor? Action K is the agreement with James Wright for professional development on RTI, et cetera. Do I have a motion? Second? Questions? All in favor? Thank you. Action L, the agreement with Megan Elliott for a one-day workshop on the comprehensive threat assessment guidelines. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
This is excuse me one second, this is, the cost of this is $3,500.
Thank you.
Welcome. Or the cost is $3,500.
Are there questions? I was glad to see we're doing this, though. All in favor? Thank you. Action M is the approval of our agreement with Bell Auto School. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Thank you. N is the award of the general AC ventilation and refrigeration repairs and service through a cooperative bid. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? O is the award of our capital reserve and capital project bids, covering a lot of the air conditioning work that was approved earlier. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second?
Questions? I think it's exciting we're at the bid stage. All in favor? P is the approval of special education service contracts. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Q is the approval of the health services contracts. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? R is the approval of the IEPs. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Question?
Second.
Sorry. Are there any, because I was just thinking you might have a question.
Carried.
Does anyone have a
Motion,
question?
First. Second, third. Who's on first?
All in favor? Okay, S is the resolution regarding Section 75 charges. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? And we are to 9, which is comments from the public. If anyone has any comments that they wish to share with the board, if you would please come to the podium and give us your name and town of residence. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Lisa Cashman from Seacliff. Press the or just get closer. Do you want me to sing? Because I can sing. I just want to talk a little bit about the standardized testing. I have a third grader who just went through it. I made the decision not to opt out, and this is kind of my forum to share with you that even though I did not opt her out, the reason I didn't opt her out is because I didn't see this incredible test prep that I understood was, and pallets of, test prep materials show up at school, and a lot of time out of classroom to get the kids ready for these tests. And I know that the opt-out maybe rate was a little bit lower, but I don't want that to be misconstrued as like, oh, we all really want to care about this test again. The reason I didn't opt her out is because I saw this rich learning environment that was multidisciplinary, that included STEAM in her everyday class stuff, and it, she was building, I'm just speaking my third grader right now, but she was building like the Great Wall of China in her classroom, and it wasn't just in the STEAM lab that she was doing these things, it was integrating the whole thing. My point being, I understand from teachers in other districts and our district that a lot of this test prep is not this rich curricula that I'm kind of describing. It's really, again, sort of this SVO for the teachers and for the students. It's not really in line with all that. So I guess I didn't want the non-opt-out rate to be misconstrued as really a stamp of approval on this testing that we are mandated to do. So that was the comment that I wanted to make tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else? Okay. We will move. Yes? Okay.
Good evening, Dan O'Connor, Glen Head. I just want to say, last meeting I got up and I spoke about the ball fields and the line item that was on there for $500,000 for the girls' middle school field. Since that time, I actually was able to go down to the fields because my son's on the 7th grade ball team. And again, I'm not against fixing any fields because I do that myself in the community. But the amount of money allocated to one field, and I'm not sure if the board understands the conditions of the field, but I believe a few years ago the middle school boys field was redone, and kind of to my point last time, it hasn't been maintained ever since that amount of money was spent. I sat and watched where there's a bench that doesn't even fit enough of the boys on the ball field, and then there's a piece of wood attached to it that they can sit on. It kind of looks jerry-rigged, so to speak. So I just wanted to give information to the board that when you're approving $500,000 for one field, I think it would behoove you to take a look at what's going on down there and see that maybe that money should be appropriated a little bit better as an even keel amongst many projects that could go on, because if you're not going to upkeep those fields, $500,000 again is a lot of money to put into one field that just underwent some work, from what I understand, and grass was pulled up, and there was actually just work done on that middle school girls field. In addition, just so you're aware, when I received my son's uniform, it's a used uniform, and I actually took it to the dry cleaner, 1, to get it cleaned, 2, to replace the broken buttons, and 3, to re-stitch every other button on the shirt. So when you're talking about $500,000 into one field, and then the school district is giving out uniforms that look like that, it doesn't really jive. It doesn't make sense. So I just hope the school, and whether it's with the athletic director or whoever it is, looks at things a little bit closer, because it doesn't make sense to have this grand scheme of 500,000 on one field and then continually use used uniforms that aren't even workable unless I bring them, like I did my son's shirt, to get it fixed before he could wear it. So I just wanted to make sure the board and everyone was aware of those issues, because you probably don't hear some of that stuff from time to time, but something to think about. Thank you.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, thank you. I hadn't heard about the uniforms.
No, well,
It's-
can you let, offline, right, just let me know, let's talk more specifically about that, because those uniforms should be conditioned every year. So you shouldn't be getting, your son shouldn't be getting a uniform in that condition. And then as far as the field goes, I've spoken directly with John Hall and Olivia about this. We've got it all laid out. We'll have you in, we'll go through each of those lines to show you how we got there. Just let us know and we'll make an appointment to take care of that with you. Okay?
And I'll add for the public and for the board that's not on construction steering that we did have to do a lot of work on the softball field so that it was playable for the spring. But that work didn't address the issues that we knew of before that about the very significant drainage issues that leave it, and which are going to be expensive to deal with, which leave it unusable for vast periods of time. But I hope you'll come in so that you can see all of that.
Thanks, Dan.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to old business. Trustees? New business.
Actually,
Oh, good.
one question about the tutoring policy. The board asked me to follow up on what
Okay.
others were doing, so I just wanted to get that information back to the board. So of the, I went back to our immediate quadrant. There are a couple of districts who don't allow tutoring at all within their districts, but the ones that do allow, you may not tutor a student on your roster, right? So there were no districts who precluded tutoring within the specific building within our quadrant, right?
They seem like extremes, like.
Correct. So so we have 11 districts in our quadrant. Of the 11 districts in our quadrant, anybody who does allow their teachers to tutor says their board's policy is that you may not tutor a student who is on your roster, right? But you may tutor a student within the school that you teach in.
Or they just say no one in the building,
Right.
period.
Correct. Do you have a question?
You said there are two districts that don't, when you say don't allow tutoring at all, what do you?
They don't allow, so if a student goes to the North Shore Schools, a teacher on the payroll of the North Shore Schools may not tutor that student privately.
Anyone in the whole district.
Anyone in the whole district.
Okay.
So just procedurally, we discussed, this will reappear as a discussion item, and we'll discuss, and then we'll have a vote, or will it reappear as a recommendation from the policy committee or you?
Yeah, so what I'm thinking in terms of good practices, we'll bring it back to the policy committee for further discussion, and then subsequently back to the board for a first reading based on what we worked through. As long as the board feels that's the way to go, that would be my recommendation.
If we're discussing the policy committee and old business too, when we contracted with NISBA, with the
Yes.
policy review,
Mhm.
is anything going to come, like entirely new missing policies going to come out of that? Or is it just,
We took care of some of them tonight, I
Right.
think. Yes. The simple answer is yes.
some
So,
entirely new?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They were in the yes. All right, more old business or on to new with you?
So in light of Mr. O'Connor's comments and some of the past experience, I've been on the construction steering committee now for 6 years. And I've made this suggestion before to prior administrations, especially when we were doing the bond. We have members of the community that are on our audit committee. We do have many engineers, architects, construction people in the district. We don't seem to utilize that expertise, and even in the community bond forum. I mean, the last community bond forum meeting I was at, there was one person on that list who I know has some construction experience, and she didn't make the meeting. So I'm wondering if it's possible, and if the board should consider, it's a two sort of part question. One, is it possible if we could have community members serve on the construction steering committee, if that's possible, and if the board would like, if that is indeed possible, would the board like to take that up as a discussion item?
I do feel like we've had this come up before.
I've raised
Yeah.
it several times.
Right, and I think, and I made the point too that it is a public meeting.
It's a public meeting, and we've had people come to public meetings.
Right.
To the meetings. I don't know that the public is aware that our construction steering committee meetings are noticed and are public meetings. So if you have a concern, you can attend those meetings. You're not allowed to speak, but you can attend, which is
I'd
also
certainly like to see a discussion, and I think it's another way to add openness and
transparency.
public participation. I see.
These are big ticket items.
Is the board comfortable with discussing it? They're nodding. Would you like to have a discussion item?
Obviously not now. Not now, but with advice from our legal as well.
No, I wasn't assuming that we were doing it now. What I'm saying this is new business. It has to go, we have to bring it up here, and then it goes on an agenda. That will be the process.
All right, so hold all of your good thoughts, people.
Yep, that'll be a good idea.
Peter looks a little stressed, but we'll discuss it.
Stressed is probably not the right. So we have, after
being a little
tonight,
facetious.
with the board has 2 meetings left. So your next meeting, May 30, is, you've got 2 discussion items, homework task force and world language. And then the June 13 meeting is tenure and retirees, also a full night. And we have some student recognition on May 30. So is it okay with the board if we bring this for discussion when we talk about the structuring of the board's committee structure in the new fiscal year?
If that allows sufficient time for us to bring people on board in September, that, because you'd have to publish and take applications and screen that. So we know from the audit committee how long it took us to get to people, and we really came up with fabulous members with one of whom had a lot of experience in not-for-profits, which I think is really helpful. So if we wait until July, you may not get someone for September. You would be more talking about November.
I'm not convinced it will be that long a discussion.
Do you want to take it up in?
I was
would you
like, I'm
to-
tempted to try to discuss it at the next meeting, and if it bogs down, we'll have to put
We
it
can
off.
move it.
But if it goes quickly and we're like,
All right, so
this
maybe,
is how, and what we do.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're all going to have. We all obviously, I don't speak for anybody, but advocated for transparency across the board whenever that opportunity comes up. And so other than having the legal opinion and telling us what we can and can't do, it seems like a relatively short discussion.
I think we just,
I do
right,
agree that
wanna-
seating them as soon as possible is important, but I also know, as sitting on that committee as well, it's not we don't really evaluate things in a calendar year. There are always things coming up and going down, so if someone jumped in, even if they weren't there for the first meeting, I think they would still be able to participate in a meaningful way.
I'm just thinking about the bond, because you have the bond coming up, right? You have 3 more really meetings for the bond. Then you really have to start formulating the scope of the bond and getting the information out. So if you really want to have a November date for the bond, you really have to know pretty much by the end of the year what the scope of your bond
I
is
think we're
going
gonna
to
spend
be,
more
because
time
then you have to start
discussing
getting your
when to
materials out in the
discuss it.
fall.
Than the actual, I think it's going to take, this is taking longer than the actual discussion will
Yes.
take. Just put it on.
All right, so I'm going to put it on as, so maybe, perhaps what I could do is put this on as an item for old business at the next meeting. Sometimes we bring back,
Just, yeah, you're just saying you want bulleted,
yes,
that, yes, so that people know that's the conversation.
that's what we're talking
and
about,
then,
yes?
yeah.
Okay,
And
fine.
Jack will tell us if we're doing anything insane, because we're inclined to open it up.
Okay.
He says he's not going to. He
He's
says
not
he's
going
never
to.
coming back.
Okay. All right, May 30, thank you.
Okay, not dissimilarly, I have a point for new business, which is, I'm trying to think ahead. You know, in July with the reorganization meeting, we generally approve a vast number of, professional services contracts, that we may or may not then need to use during the year, and they're a very different kind of thing, and there are a lot of times people that we've worked with for a number of years. So when we get to that point, I just wanted to make sure that even though we're renewing someone, that we have confirmed that they still meet all current requirements in terms of licensing, insurance, et cetera, that we're not just rolling over someone we've been rolling over for years without making sure their ducks are still in a row. And I don't want to bring it up in July because that would be a little late. It's a lot of them,
And Olivia and I talked about this week, yeah.
you know?
But don't, when they, our standard form contract makes them make the representation. That doesn't mean
We
they
don't
actually
see-
have
We
that.
don't see those on the professional services thing, so we often just get that letter that says so-and-so and then the hourly rate. It's not. a
But no, but I,
simple
but I think the
process.
standard contract, even for the professional services, does now provide, our standard contract does now provide, because we've changed it, because I've been yelling about that, and Superintendent Jurizzo
So
did
we
it.
could- if that's the case.
You
then-
actually did it for us.
that's
Put
the
a standard
case-
contract in that makes that representation that they have insurance.
Yes.
Yes, thank you,
You're welcome.
Superintendent.
So if that's the case, right, then if we have that paperwork, that's sufficient. And if we have something else, like, you know, a memo, then we need the other piece.
Well, the simple fact is, for every contract that the board takes action upon, right, whatever the clauses in there, the representations on insurances and whatever they are representing to us, we have an obligation to make sure that we have those in place before we bring those forward to the board. And Olivia and I had a conversation about that earlier this week, and she knows that for every contract that we're starting to put together now and getting ready for the July meeting, that that analysis will be done for each and every single one of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other new business?
I have something, sir. I'd like to share an experience that I had, and I think that my end comment would be a suggestion that we consider mental health first aid. This is something that Andrew McCary spoke about last year during the board election. I happened to take the course 2 weeks ago. It was probably the best learning experience I've had in my life. It was really enabled me to identify and distinguish anxiety and depression and eating disorders and substance abuse disorders, many of which our children have combinations of those things. But the crux of and the focus was really learning assessments for risk, learning to listen non-judgmentally, giving reassurance and information, encouraging professional help and support strategies. This is of particular interest to me when it comes to substance abuse disorders, because I've been talking in the last year about providing our kids with harm protection in terms of being able to evaluate when one of their friends is in a serious situation, to be able to assess that in order to get the support that they need. So I would normally ask Rob to consider this for professional development, but I'll throw it out to Chris. This really was an incredibly valuable thing that I think if our kids could learn and if our staff could learn to really be able to differentiate and how to react appropriately to these situations. 20% of our population has mental health issues, and this is really important.
And you're saying you're referring to something, mental health first aid, and you're saying
It
this
is,
was
of
appropriate
course.
for staff
Yes.
and...
I'm sorry?
You're saying it's appropriate for staff and students?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Especially the piece for students, because it is an 8-hour course, but I think we could design something for the kids that would focus on substance abuse issues when they're with their friends, and sometimes they leave their friends because they don't know what to do, and really teaching them the skills to protect themselves and their peers.
Thank you.
Well, we'll look into it.
And if you want, it's hard to top that.
Well, I'm
What
topping
you
it with
got?
something very simple, which is just, this week, there was an event at the Yacht Club for incoming kindergartners thrown by the Viking Foundation. I think it's important to mention, it was a great event. There were Lisa was there, Rich was there, there were scores of new families there. I think they really appreciated it, and the Viking Foundation, I think is going to be a real force going forward. So
They did a really nice job.
They did a really nice job. It was a great night.
Nice event, and there were many mothers there who were expecting. So as far as future enrollments,
Call the
it might be
demographers.
going up.
Right.
They kept talking about the class of 2032. I think Lisa's got the class of 2037. You're counting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, we will let the record note that it is anticipated, and in fact, we will convene an executive session now to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or persons. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Thank you all. We're leaving this time, right?
Going back to the